I'm Christine. Welcome to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast, where I empower you to develop sustainable habits, challenge society, and take messy action. It's time to align with the universe for the full human experience and redefine what it really means to be successful.
It's too good, the secret is out and wow.
Welcome back to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast, the official podcast of the dance wellness community. I am here with an incredible champion level dancer and one of our ambassadors for our community, Andrew Escolme. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. So excited to talk to you. First of all, I just want to thank you so much. I've been such a huge fan of yours for so long. So the fact that you are here to do this, and I'm just excited that your story is going to be told and that we get to do something really cool like this, because this is kind of what I really want to do. You know what I mean? I really want some of these high level dancers to really kind of I want that reflection to happen. And I really want these other dancers who look up to you to be like, oh, wow, either I can do it too, or he's just like me, that kind of thing. That's very important to people to feel that way. And I think just overall, the message of wellness it's spreading so much in the world itself. But I think in high professional athletics, it doesn't always get its moment.
No, yeah, I totally agree. It's my pleasure to be here. It's nice to be able to kind of have the opportunity to talk about something that for me is really, really important. And I think it's great that you and the dance wellness community are able to sort of shine a light on things that need to be talked about and need to be brought to the surface in, as you said, in every walk of life, and including athletics and high-powered sport, high-level sport and the arts, places that generally people sort of don't talk about these kind of things.
I just kind of want to dive right in.
You got to check the depth though, because
okay,
you don't want to hit your head on the bottom. That's the problem.
That's it. We'll give you a life jacket to start. I want to talk about, first of all, for those who don't know, start with kind of what got you into dance. How did you even begin this journey? Because a lot of people know what you've accomplished, and we can kind of reverse engineer that if you want. But I do want to know where the journey began for Andrew.
Right. So I grew up in England, in the Midlands of England. My parents are from both English. My family originates in Latvia, and so I have an Eastern European background a little bit. My mom's half Latvian. And they were from the north of England, so they're from Leeds, and then they moved down to the Midlands. And they kind of fell into dancing in a lot of ways, as a lot of adults do when they're sort of in their 30s, sort of looking for something to do. Actually, it must have been maybe late 20s, early 30s. They were looking for something to do that was fun and social. And they had a friend whose dad went to dance classes. So they went along and sort of went to adult social classes, and then just kept going to adult social classes as my mom got pregnant with me. And then I was going to adult social classes as a third wheel kind of thing between the two of them. And then after I was born, my mom and dad were very proud and took me to the class in my carry cart and showed me off as part of their, and I'm very fortunate to have great, loving parents. And
yeah, that makes a difference.
So even from birth, I was sort of involved in a dance studio, but not until I was sort of 5 or 6 did my mom and dad say, hey, do you want to try this? Do you want to give it a go? And I did, and I hated it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you didn't think that was going to happen, did you? You didn't expect that.
Plot twist.
It was going to be, oh, beautiful. I was drawn to it. No, I hated it. Absolutely hated it.
It's amazing.
Didn't want to do it at all. Decided, no, this isn't for me. And then sort of spent 3 or 4 years as a kid, just kind of being a kid, doing all the things that you do as a kid, kind of playing football, particularly in England, playing football, I played golf quite a lot with my dad,
Yes.
but then I'm an only child, so there was, I guess, a
Oh,
slight concern that I would become I would struggle to be normalized to society as a child, and I wasn't kind of great at making friends, wasn't overly social, so
right.
there was this concern that golf as a solo sport wasn't necessarily a way for me
Right.
to meet people, and I was hanging out with my dad all the time. So I mean, my dad's really cool, but he's not a 8-year-old kid, so
No, right. You
not
got to have that balance. Yeah.
mentally maybe he is actually, but
Sure, sure, sure.
but but the then at that point then there was a formation team at the dance studio, so that was, and I was probably about 10, so then I really sort of
Okay.
got into dancing properly, and I really enjoyed being a part of a team, with
Yeah.
kids my own age that had a similar interest, and then I really just kind of started to enjoy it. And the dance teacher that I was at, the dance school that I was at, was run by Martin Cutler in England, and he was a former champion dancer. He had a son and a daughter that competed, and he kind of like picked me out as someone that could be worth bringing to the front of the group. And I thought that was, my parents thought that was cool. My parents
Oh,
enjoyed that. So then I got a dance partner and sort of started competing from there, really. And then
wow.
never stopped. Well, until now, never stopped.
Right. So, I mean, it really, wow, that is so crazy that one decision that your parents made for just their personal life.
Oh,
Did,
totally. Yeah,
can
yeah.
you
My
like
parents,
the ripple effect of what that does? I
totally.
mean, we understand that that's how decisions are made in the world, but like it's crazy to hear the through line just so
Totally.
vividly.
You meet a lot of kids, and actually a lot of kids, I feel like now more than ever now, there are a lot of kids of dancers who are involved in dancing. And I grew up,
Right.
obviously, with the school that I was at, there was two kids who were the son and daughter of the owner. So you meet a
Right.
lot of kids that are kind of built into the world,
Right.
and it's kind of there's always been like legacy dancers in that sense, or heritage dancers.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's how my brother and I started. My dad owned
Right,
a dance
exactly.
studio. It just was like and what's so great is he never really pushed us, so it really
Mm.
gave us the desire to be like I love that your parents they were like, "Well, what do you think about this?" And you're like, "Nah, I'm good."
Exactly.
And then they were like, "Cool." So then they put you in something else. My brother also played soccer, so like
Yeah.
there was this kind of teamwork, other kind of thing to do, and then he's like, "Oh, but wait." Like at like 8 years old, we can go and stay at, huge hotels and order room service. And he's
Right,
like,
right,
I
right.
think I want a ballroom dance.
Right, right. I don't know necessarily what my draw was, but
Yeah.
I enjoyed I enjoyed being with girls more than just
Yes,
boys. That was a
that's
big
it.
draw for me, and
Yes,
I
yes, yes,
kind of
yes.
enjoyed that significantly.
I get
So
that.
it's
Yeah,
what can I say? There's a lot of guys that get into dancing for to be around people of the opposite gender, and
correct.
even at 10, what can I say? That was me.
I mean, but
What
that's
a
kind of what
terrible
it
thing to say.
brings. No, I think that's wonderful. I love the partnership aspect. Like when I talk to like ballet dancers or hip hop dancers,
Mm,
a lot, again, it's kind of that like you were talking about golf, that solo aspect, unless they're partnering in ballet. But a lot of
yeah,
times, like they don't have that action reaction that we have in ballroom, that compression and that
right, right.
stretch and those things that we do, and like how you have a lead and a follow and all of this
Totally, totally. I think actually,
conversation going on.
yeah, now I'm older and I've taught dancing and I've been involved in the dance world much longer. I think when I look back, and I've obviously kind of done a lot of looking back
Of
over the
course.
years, through my own personal mental health journey, and also through this journey through dancing and approaching retirement. Kind
Yeah.
of you end up looking retrospectively at your career or how you started dancing, and people ask
Mhm.
you a lot similar questions to those that you're asking me. And it really for me is that the social and the human element of ballroom dancing was the thing that kind of drew me to it more than anything, not necessarily the act of dancing, the
I see.
the act of dancing as an interaction between two people, or the interaction as a group of people creating a performance, and then also the interaction between you and the audience.
The audience. Oh, totally.
Yeah. And
Yes,
then
yes, yes.
when you're in England, you dance to a lot more live bands. So then you have another element of
Yeah.
human interaction between you and the person playing the instrument. And for me, that's kind of always been the thing that kind of, that's why I have danced. Not necessarily, and I love music. If I could have been, I definitely am a tortured musician on the inside. Like
Do
music.
you play any instruments?
Oh no, definitely not.
No, I know.
Well,
It's so funny
okay,
because a lot of dancers, I feel like they don't. We found our rhythm through
right,
dance, and then
right.
we never really picked up an instrument because dance became our instrument. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think of my body as my instrument. I think in
right,
that
totally.
it's kind of, I'd always feel like it's the reason we're dancing is because of music, but the reason that I am involved in dancing is because of kind of human interaction. And I love
I agree.
that. And I can look back at me as a 10-year-old kid and realize, yeah, I didn't know it at the time, but that was why I was drawn to it.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so we're gonna skip ahead a little bit.
Okay, good.
You
Sounds good.
just right, but I love that because we're gonna come back. You just retired.
Yes.
How long has it been now?
Uh, 4 months.
Yeah, very recently.
Just, yeah, 3.5.
You retired at Ohio.
Yes, yeah. I
How
was
fun?
really,
Why Ohio?
um, we kind of looked at it as like we were going to retire. We wanted to retire at a competition.
Okay.
We didn't want to kind of disappear off, and we
Right,
wanted to retire, like, because obviously competition is our kind of like the pinnacle of our art form. It's not
right,
whether you're a competitive person or not. I don't necessarily think I'm as competitive as, well, the impression I get is I'm not as competitive as some of the people around me, that's for sure.
right. Yes,
But
yes, yes.
but I feel like that is that's what you're training for. That's what you're working
Right.
towards. So we felt very strongly that we wanted to go out at that level. We didn't want to take 6 months off and then do a show at the end. That was just, and
Right.
that works for some people, and I think it's
Yeah.
admirable, however anybody chooses to retire. But we
Yeah.
felt very strongly we wanted to do that. And Ohio is like the biggest comp at the end of the year. We'd
It
figured,
is. Yeah.
Astra and I had a conversation sort of, we won Blackpool, and then we kind of came back, took a couple of weeks to sort of regroup, and then came back. And actually, I went on my honeymoon in that couple of weeks. That was great. And
Yeah. Love
then
that.
and then kind of came back and had a discussion, and I'm sure Asta won't mind me saying this. It was her who kind of instigated the discussion about the fact that she was kind of reaching the end of not her desire to do it, but her desire to do it for a long time. So she was kind of reaching the
Well,
point.
at that level, I think that's the conversation I have a lot with the professionals that
Mm,
reach, like again, winning Blackpool, like those high levels, is there's this sustainability factor of
right.
like you're in a season, you're pushing, and that season could be 3 years, it could be, 10 years, it could be however long it takes for you to accomplish the goal you're looking to do. But humans, I mean, I don't know, this might be a controversial thing to say, but I think that humans are not designed to be pushing at that level for 10,
Oh,
20
totally.
years, right? You
Totally.
have to, I mean, that because a lot of people, again, you're jet lag, you're on planes all the time, you're never home, you have no social life, you're working in the studio 8 to 10 hours a day. There's a lot of exhaustion. You have to create this holisticness around what
Right.
you're
Right.
doing. And so to be able to compete at that high level and maintain and stay fresh and constantly be, people are chasing your title, you know, it's
Yeah,
it's a lot.
it's not a sustainable thing to do. And I think that
Correct.
that was the discussion that kind of ultimately we had, which was we we want to, if we want to do this, we want to do it at the level that we have been doing it for the last
Right.
4 years. And we've both been doing it for much longer than that with previous partners, but it was like we had been really solid on everything to be 100% committed to it, whilst also having a job, whilst also maintaining relationships. That's not always easy.
Yes.
And I
No, it's
think that
not.
that was the point at which we kind of both felt that we were at a point in our lives where we were ready to change. And it
Yeah.
was just that Ohio happened to come at the end of that year,
The
and
perfect time.
we were fortunate enough that they allowed us to have that moment the day after the competition, and it was an unbelievable experience
Oh,
for me.
I'm sure. I mean, I saw it on a video because I wasn't there, but to be in that room, already that room is so iconic,
Absolutely.
and then to be there having that moment. I mean, the people that I know that were there, they were like, "Oh my gosh," it was like like everything stopped. And so, I mean, you two are very, very loved. And I know that it was hard for people to watch, but it was also like everyone was so emotional about your journey of how you got here.
Yeah, I think for me it was kind of a realization that cause everybody says like, oh yeah, you guys were so missed, you're going to be so missed, you were so appreciated, and it's like, oh,
Right.
I never really known that, and never really
Right, because
given that.
that's easy to say,
Right, right.
or like, oh, we love you guys, you know what I mean? But then when it comes down to it, when they really have to kind of like, I don't want to say prove that, but it's like you get to a point where it's like, oh no, oh my gosh, like there's this like realness happening. Like they're really going.
Yeah. The kind of outpouring of emotion that was displayed was
Yeah.
a real shocker in a sense, because
Interesting.
we just didn't expect it. We kind of expected to
Yeah.
be like, oh yeah, that's nice. We'll do our thing and then we'll leave. And that definitely wasn't how it went. Uh,
No, not at all.
so yeah, it was really nice. And it was a really special moment, and kind of like, I don't want to say the highlight of my career, but it was definitely the because I've enjoyed a lot of things over my career, and I've been very, very fortunate to be successful in a lot of ways. But it was definitely like the pinnacle of me feeling that my peers were
Mm.
um, accepting, which is kind of huge for me. Because you want to be judged. Your peers are your best judges, really, because adjudicators are adjudicators. They're employed to do a job. And whether the system that we have in ballroom dancing is flawed in any way or not, it makes no
Right.
difference. But your peers are the people who you are really, who are on the same journey as you, and they understand. So
Yes.
to have their appreciation meant the absolute world to me personally.
Oh, I'm sure. Good segue into you had lots of amazing moments in your career because I kind of want to talk about that.
Yeah,
You mentioned your Blackpool title. Obviously, you became in Blackpool. It's because you competed in rhythm, so they
right,
added
right.
the American styles a few years back, right?
Yeah, I feel like this is maybe like the sixth or seventh year that they've had it, and kind of,
Right.
I
So
I remember.
go
Go ahead.
ahead. No, go
No, no,
ahead.
go ahead, please.
It's a world title over there or a national or
Well, it's the Blackpool title,
it's the
so
Blackpool title, right?
it's kind of stands by itself
Right.
as a title, just as it always has since Blackpool was created. Kind of, I
Right.
believe it was created as a title. It was created before the world title. The world title came late.
True. Okay. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah,
before
I
the
mean,
majors kind of precede the world titles, and now we have so many world titles, it's kind of confusing. But
yeah,
Blackpool for me is always Blackpool, and whether everybody
iconic.
chooses to attend, or whether it's now a kind of an overly politicized event, is kind of meaningless to me, because it's, as an English person, it's that,
Right.
for me, that and the Royal Albert Hall are the most iconic places that you can dance, and to have won
Yeah.
an event in that ballroom is kind of the thing that means the most.
Yeah. Did you go, I mean, as dancers, we kind of can go into an event, also see kind of who we're competing against and kind of know, okay, like, we've got some tough competition here, or we kind of have this in the bag. How did you feel before the competition and then after when you won?
It's I actually was we were really lucky to be invited to do a lecture at Blackpool.
Oh, wow. That's an honor.
Yeah, that was kind of almost, for me, I don't want to say more important. That was the thing that was most concerning for me. The competition was the competition.
You
We've
do it all the
competed,
time. Yeah.
yeah, we have competed against the couples that we competed against multiple times,
Yeah.
and you get into a sense of knowing what could and could not happen, really. Whereas with the lecture, that was something that was completely new, and it was something that was kind of just us, and it involved me standing and talking in front of people, not just dancing, which is something that
Right.
I've done and we'd prepared for in a totally different way. So in a sense, you kind of any competitor knows going, I feel, and generally most competitors know, you can't say any, but every, but most competitors know going into an event what the likelihood of you getting a certain result is, because
Right.
it's happened before. You know that it
Right.
could change, but you generally have a rough idea. So we went in knowing that there was a strong possibility that we would win. And the fact
Right.
that then we were doing a lecture the next day was helpful in that sense. But it
Yeah.
was
Cherry
also
on top.
really, yeah, but it was also really nerve-wracking because it was that thing of, okay, we're doing a lecture tomorrow. People are going to be at that lecture that watches today in the competition. And my view was, okay, we have to put on a performance which is representative of this is our knowledge base. You're going
Right.
to hear about it tomorrow. And we want you to be able to say, hey, yeah, that's what they did yesterday. They are talking, they know
Yes.
their stuff. They are intellectually aware that their dancing is created in the way that they say it is.
Wow.
And I think for me, that was a kind of a big turning point. And I struggled from like maybe 2 months beforehand, like kind of just trying to get into this understanding of, oh wow, people are asking me to share my opinion on things. And
Yes, yes,
that was
yes.
kind of a big that was a turning point for me because that was almost the beginning of where I'm at now as a non-competitive dancer. I'm somebody whose knowledge is requested. Like,
Valued.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
maybe it's not as valued by some people as it is others, but it's
No,
more
but requested is a
people
good
are
way to
requested.
say it too. But
Yeah,
yes, it's appreciated and it's desired. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So that was kind of the that put I felt put pressure on, and we put pressure on ourselves.
Yes.
But because I was somebody that I think something that potentially surprises people is that Asta and I never really got into dancing together and dancing rhythm, because obviously Asta switched over to rhythm and I
Yes, she
made,
was a Latin dancer, yes?
yeah, she was an unbelievable Latin dancer.
Yeah.
But for me, there was a big wake up call that she sort of requested a tryout with me, and I was a big
Wow.
fan of hers and her previous partners, so that was
Yeah,
kind of like, oh,
she was pretty iconic on the floor. I agree.
totally. And
Yeah.
it took me about 6 months to be like, wow, yeah, she's my partner, rather than like, oh my God,
Wow.
it's Asta. Like, whoa. So that was
Wow.
there's been some sort of and it's all based on how my head works, but it's
Yes, it's
interesting.
humbling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But for me, the pressure that I put on myself to do a respectable job of representing the style, representing my dancing, and my dancing representing the knowledge that we're going to talk about was like a huge thing.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. So you've had amazing times. You've done incredible things. You have a lot of titles. How many partners have you had throughout your career?
Um, Four.
Okay.
So actually,
Four.
well, I guess five, probably
Okay.
six. Depends on how long. I'm going
Depends on
back
how long we
all
stay
the
on
way
the
back.
podcast.
I get, yeah. Actually, 27.
Right, right.
I had
Okay.
maybe I had six. So I had some really, really wonderful partners when I was a kid. I had my very
Okay.
first partner that I danced the competition with. I remember dancing the wrong way around the floor in the samba.
Oh no.
That was something that sticks in the memory. And
Yep.
I had a really, really cool partner who I won the did I win? No, I didn't win. I got second in the under 12 beginners category with. And then I had a really nice, lovely partner in juvenile who I wasn't able to dance with for too long, but we had a nice kind of success.
Yeah.
And I had two partners between her and then dancing with Amy, who I danced with
Okay.
for
Yeah.
15 years.
I was
And
gonna
that
say I met you when you were dancing with Amy.
right. And we
Yeah.
experienced we were able to win a number of titles together, and we had a really nice run of
Yeah.
successes together. And we moved here together, and life
Yeah.
changes, you change, I definitely changed. And that led us to where we're at now. And obviously there's things that you would change in the past, but the past is the past. It remains where it is, and we move forward. So now, and I was very, very fortunate to be, in my opinion, given an extra 2 years with somebody that I would never have expected to have
Right.
had, and 2 years in a career that I would never have expected to have gotten. Um, I
Right.
kind of was all for, yeah, if somebody asks, I'll try again, but I wasn't necessarily somebody that was like desperate to get back out on the floor. And I think given some of the things that I had been through from a personal standpoint,
Yeah.
um, it took a lot more than just getting a partner to get myself back into the public in a sense, right? Not even
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
dance floor, just being visible as a person. That was kind of
Yeah, so let's get into that a little bit because I know that we had chatted a little bit about it and you can share whatever
Mm.
it is that you would like to share about it. But um, it hasn't all been sunshine and rainbows. No competitive journey at that level ever is. You have to go through your adversities, your challenges in order to grow into the champion that you're supposed to be, right? That's, tale as old as time. But everyone has their own journey and their own challenges they go through. Um, those moments, as you said, there are things that maybe you would have changed, things you wouldn't have changed. I think a lot of those moments when I look back on even just what I've done, not even just in dance, but in everything, those moments for me are like I didn't grow. I grew more in the moments when I was not doing well than the moments that I was like, everything's great.
100,
And
100%.
and so you did have, right before you were with Asta. I mean, when you guys started, the minute you guys got on the floor, I can't remember where you were. It was an East Coast comp because you guys live over there. And I remember looking at my husband being like, oh my God, get ready for this. This is about to be a show. And we couldn't wait until you guys came over to our side of the country to dance. But from day one, you guys were just fire and the connection and the chemistry and the level you were dancing at. But it's very clear now that we've had a few conversations, in order for you to come out of the gate that strong together, you've definitely went through something and you definitely worked through, like you came in with a clean slate, it felt like, if that makes sense. Correct. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. I
from your
mean,
own personal experience,
oh
because
no, of course.
you know what I mean? In a sense that like when you went to a place where it just things weren't working, because things weren't always working. Let's talk about
Right.
when that was happening. You know what I mean?
No, I think I so in 20, I think it was kind of coming out of the pandemic really
Yeah.
was, I think,
That was a
a
hard time for everybody. It changed a lot of
right.
things.
That was on a global level, that was
Right.
life changing. And
Oh,
then when we look at how life changing that was kind of for a species, it was life changing for individuals in a lot of ways. And
right.
um, it was not an easy time for me. It was not an easy time for the situation I was in, but it was not because of that necessarily that I found myself purely in the situation I was. I think I would have gone through the troubles, and in a way I would have needed to go through the problems that I faced to be able to be where I am now. And whilst it was painful for me, it was really unfortunately painful for those people who were around me and cared for me.
Mm.
Um, but unfortunately, we have to sometimes you have to break down to be able to rebuild. And
Right.
I likened it to a slowly deflating balloon, really.
Mm.
You can't ever put air back into a deflating balloon, it's always going to find a way out. And that sense, I found myself in a position where I was lost psychologically, mentally not present. I was kind of going through days with no real kind of engagement with the outside world other than what needed to happen. I would do my job, and I think I would be. I would say the 6 to 9 months after the pandemic, when the world kind of reopened, I was not present at all. I don't really have many recollections of that, and it's interesting. Some of my students now, I still teach the majority of my students, and one student in particular has a picture of me at a competition where I remember specifically being at possibly my lowest point physically and mentally, just kind of not enjoying life at all, and not enjoying life because I wasn't in it. I was not present.
Right.
And this
You were still competing. You were
I was still
you never
competing.
stopped really.
No, I was still competing. I was still dancing with students. I was doing what I thought a great job of hiding how terrible everything was. And then,
Oof.
and you know, my view was that nobody really knew. And I think looking back, everybody kind of could tell, yeah, something's not right with him, but nobody really knew what it was. And if I'm honest, I didn't know what it was, but it was just through a sort of, there's a picture of me that she has that you can see that I don't even look like me. I just am a shell of myself. And that for me was a turning point in time where I sort of started to understand that I was having some major mental health issues, major mental health crisis in a way. I didn't understand it. I was in denial about it. It was
You probably didn't even know how you even got there.
No,
Yeah.
I had an idea and I knew that I needed to make changes, but I didn't really know what the changes were. I just sort of, I had gone into patterns of kind of unhelpful behaviors, social withdrawal. A lot of it came down to a sort of sense of self-loathing, and
Interesting.
really not liking the person that I was and the person that I had become, and not really seeing a link between the kid that I was and the person that I had felt that I knew who I was before I moved to America. And then the person that I'd become. And, you know, the situations around you tend to sort of dictate your growth. And, but you're also in charge of that on a holistic sense. You are in charge of understanding what is good for you and what is bad for you. And if you don't do that, then you're not helping yourself, and you can't blame your situation purely. And ultimately, you're the one that's reacting to it in the way that you are. And I was choosing to react to it in a completely self-destructive way. And I think it got to a point in sort of February of, what year is it now? 2025, 2022, where I was just empty. Didn't know where I was, didn't know who I was, sort of just going through the motions of life. Internally. Externally, I don't know whether that was kind of visible. I kind of tried my best to hide it. I'd begun a little bit of therapy, but I was totally disengaged from the process of it, and in denial about whether I needed it. And
I see.
yeah, and there was a point in March where it just got to, I guess, the point where all the air from the balloon had just completely gone. It burst, and all of my darkest thoughts kind of came to the fore of my mind, and I attempted suicide. So that was something that was sort of, yeah, and a really interesting choice for me to make, because I remember the first question that I was asked when I came, and I was very fortunate that I was called, and I was not in a situation where I wasn't. I mean, it was, I would say it was particularly close, and the doctors kind of made me very aware of how lucky I was to be alive. And I would say that I am very lucky to be alive. That's not something that I now look back at and am disappointed with. I'm very pleased that the actions that I took didn't
Failed, yeah.
yeah, didn't did fail. But I was fortunate to be taken to hospital, where I was immediately admitted, and I spent 2 weeks in a mental institution in Boston, arguably the best mental institution in the country at McLean Hospital. And I learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about who I was, who I wasn't,
Mm.
and ultimately um, began a journey to trying to like myself again in a way and take away the regrets that I had made, the regrets with some of the decisions that I'd made, take away some of the pain that I'd caused other people, and try to make it clear to them and to myself that that was not the person that I was, and the person that I had become was not representative of a person that I knew. And I think that for me, it was clear that I wasn't really in my own mind correct for a good period of time. And in some of the therapies that I used, we went back to situations from my childhood, situations from growing up that would have made an impact on me and would have made an impact on anybody, but my way of dealing with them was not normal. It wasn't your average way of dealing with something, because what I learned for myself, I was diagnosed with depression, and
Mm.
it was clear that that was something that had been present in my life for a lot longer than I had even been aware. I think that people who are not neurotypical, which is a large portion of society, we kind of realized then that, oh, not everybody was feeling the same way I was feeling at that time. We normalize it for ourselves at that time, and then we sort of we have to go through something to be able to understand, oh, that wasn't actually how everybody else was feeling at that point. And that was me processing it through my atypical neurological response. And
Wow.
the education of that, I think, really highlighted to me how I was in charge of all of my decisions, and I should have been more aware that I could have been making better choices for myself and better decisions and making changes sooner than I did. And otherwise, I wouldn't have necessarily got to the point that I did get, because
Well, right. I think that's more where I kind of want to begin because, there are a lot of stories of, oh, you hit your highs and lows, you have your challenges, but to get to that level, to get to that point where it's just the boiling point, essentially.
totally, yeah.
Do you feel like our sport and this whole like we have to be on and we have to perform,
Mm.
that it created this kind of like easy for you to put, well, it doesn't sound like it was easy, but to put on this facade essentially when you would go
Oh,
do your job.
I mean, for me to have been able to continue living the way that I was living for the length of time that I
Right,
lived, it must have been relatively easy for me to have a facade, because
right.
otherwise otherwise it would have been more evident sooner. And I think that the the need for that was not necessarily societally forced, because the dance community didn't need me to do that. The dance community didn't ask me
Mm.
to do that. I wasn't
Right,
told, well, you're having problems, hide them. No, nobody in any
right.
way said that. Which is great. but there was also a lack of, I guess for me, a lack of comfort in being able to be open with the things that I struggled with, the things that the problems that I was having on a
Because I'm wondering where, like, why not ask for help? You have coaches, you have students are different because, you're teaching them. It becomes
totally, you
the
can't
business side.
undermine it.
Yeah, that's not what they're paying you for. But coaches, partnerships, like you said, family members, friends, coworkers, peers,
Mm,
organizers of events, who are hiring you for why like you said, there's the environment is not telling you can't, you have to keep pushing, you have to keep pushing. There are some pockets of it that say, hey, you gotta compete, you gotta do this, you gotta, you're hurt, push through it. But that I don't think that's the narrative very much anymore. I think people it's coming back around to a different place. However, it still doesn't feel quite like the safe space of like, ooh, I'm struggling hard and I need to ask for help. Like it didn't get to that
yeah,
point for you. And I'm wondering why. Why you
I
didn't feel
think
comfortable with the people you have been around for so long to be like, I need help.
I think I think for me it comes down to a personal thing. I think that I'm sure
Yeah.
that there are some people that are there that are having difficulties, that are struggling, that are comfortable talking to people.
Okay.
I wasn't
Okay.
somebody who was immediately at ease talking to people, mostly because I didn't understand what I needed. I didn't understand what I needed to say. I didn't
Right.
understand what I needed to do. So,
Right. It's a conversation that felt like it would go nowhere.
right. And it was a conversation I didn't even know how to have.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think, and it's really, for me, it was hugely interesting to come out of the situation and come back to, like, I was gone. I was away from the dance community for maybe 4 months,
Yeah.
and the coming back was terrifying for me,
Oh,
because
wow.
you feel like you're immediately on show, but it
Mhm.
was hugely surprising that the dance community was so welcoming and
Hmm.
so responsive to me, my new level of openness. And I
I
think that
love that.
it was like I would never have had. There were people that I had never had lengthy conversations with, that I had really meaningful interactions with within the first 2 or 3 months of me kind of returning to competition with students. And that took me by surprise hugely. And I think that the change that I had made in myself
Hmm.
was the most important one, that then led me to be able to see the change that I
Yeah.
had in the dance community. I think that the only thing that the dance community can really do more of is educate people within it that about mental health issues and about mental
Yeah.
health struggles, because that's not something that we do. But it's it is a community that is hugely accepting of
Yeah.
people who are vulnerable, people who are struggling, and people who are open about those things
Hmm.
are always welcomed, and always find people within it that are going through something similar. And if you're open with it, you're more than welcome to talk about it. But
Yeah.
I think that the thing for me was there was no education about that. And it's
You didn't know how to get the conversation started.
correct. And
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily the industry's job to do that. But if there are people within the industry who are open about it,
Hmm.
it creates openness. So if people are willing to talk about their stories, people who are we're very fortunate in the industry to have professionals who are kind of educated, who are not just dancers, not just teachers. They are people who have come from other walks of life. We have a lot of people who are ex-military, ex
Yeah.
ex ex-teachers, ex-doctors who are coming to teach dance as a second career. And we also have students within it that are
Yes.
within the field that we need. And I think that there are so many untapped, but there's so much untapped potential within the community that we don't necessarily know about. And it takes for us to create a world where people are open to be able to allow people like me who were struggling to feel that they can be open, because
and not feel like they're going to lose everything. Because
correct.
I think that's where it stems from, just, from a recovering perfectionist myself. We're constantly feeling like there's this need to achieve and perform. And if I come to this competition, it's not even about not winning, right? It's about, what if I say I can't do it today? Or
Right.
how many people am I letting down?
Right.
Students, coaches, professionals, peers, my partner, myself, my parents who helped me through this career, everyone. And that pressure of letting everybody down feels so much more massive than the pressure of the mental health struggle you're going through.
Oh, hugely. That was
And that,
definitely
right? And that seems
that was a
crazy
massive factor for me.
because you got to a point where you tried to commit suicide. So that baffles me that pressure was less than the pressure to let people down. And that is where I think, because I agree with you completely. I think our dance community, I always say that, like, being a dancer, like it's my whole life, in the sense of it helps. It's my breath, and it's therapeutic. The people that are in the dance community, we get each other on a level that other people just don't, and we're here
Right.
for each other, and that is so warming. But then, like you said, I feel like the weakness is prior to that, is you get to a point where everyone's achieving and everyone's doing and everyone's in this, grind together. And then when you feel like, I can't do it today, then all of a sudden it's like, well, you're not pushing through. You're not
Yeah.
doing it. And that is where, would people have accepted you had you come out and said, I can't do it today?
I think the overwhelming majority now that I am understanding
Right.
and
With what you know now,
with
had
what
you
I
come
know
out
now,
earlier
yeah,
with your
with what I know
struggles.
now, I would feel absolutely comfortable having that conversation with people.
Yeah.
But prior to that, the pressure that I put on myself
That's it.
to live up to the industry as a whole, because we see the industry as something that is like, it is a wonderful community and it is an amazing machine that just keeps going year after year, and it grows and grows and it changes, but it's always been there. It's kind of like an ever present that you have to fit you. Particularly for me, I felt there was this need to stay in it and stay on it. And I think that as a competitor, we kind of fear irrelevance in a sense. And I think that that fear of missing out is, I mean, that's kind of like a slightly overly
Trendy thing.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
too much of a buzzword, but it is that
Right.
sense of like, okay, well, if I'm not there, who is? If I'm not
Right.
doing this, who is? So that
Yeah.
level of that level of competition within the industry is huge. And that goes for you as a dancer, that goes for you as a teacher, that goes for you as a judge. You are always needing to be at the forefront of things.
Right.
Otherwise, your business might suffer. You is the impact that you have, is the impact that you give yourself and the viewpoint that you have. And for me, I've realized that's actually not the case. But I think that sometimes we get swept up in that is the kind of way that we run. And I maybe don't necessarily see it as much now because I've been successful. I've been at the top of the tree as a dancer, and therefore that affords you more flexibility. You can sort of take 3 months off and come back, and you can, like, I was very fortunate and I moved to New Jersey. my students did stay with me in Boston. So I came back to Boston now,
Oh, wow. That's
and
amazing.
my business didn't change. So I'm very
Yeah.
fortunate, but it's like that's not something that's afforded to everybody.
Right.
And those people who are not in the fortunate position that I am to have been where I have been and be able to have the business that I have, then those are the people who are potentially in positions of vulnerability that are struggling
Mm-hmm.
that feel the need and the pressure to keep going every day, and maybe they can't. And it's those are the people that we need to kind of make feel comfortable and make feel aware that the industry will be there and can help
Yeah.
them pick up and move forward.
Right. If you could go back now with the knowledge that you have in overcoming this and going through your journey, to go back to that Andrew in
Mm.
2021 and tell him something, what would you tell him right now?
Talk to people.
Yeah.
Talk. People are willing to listen, and
Mm-hmm.
it may not be the people that you think. Uh,
Mm,
the people that you think might listen may not be those people, because and that's okay if they're not those people, because
right.
they may not be in a position to be able to be open with you, and that's
Yeah.
okay. It's not anybody's duty to do that other than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're open, the people who are responsive and the people who are willing to listen and the people who are also open will come to you, and you will have those conversations that you don't expect to have with people that you didn't expect to have them with, and they will help you.
Right.
And that was something that I learned from Morgan. Morgan is somebody who's really open about a lot of things, and she was so open about her struggles. And
Mm-hmm. Morgan, for those of you who don't know, Morgan is your wife.
yes, yeah, she's my wonderful wife. And she taught me about the value of being open.
Mm.
And it's not about sharing everything. You don't have to share anything.
Right.
You just have to be open to people.
Yeah.
And and if you feel comfortable sharing things, great. If you don't feel comfortable sharing things, that's okay. But maybe the fact that you're open and willing to talk to people will give you the confidence next time to say something.
Yeah.
Even if that's not, I need help, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that. It
Mm-hmm.
will give you the confidence that you can talk to people.
Yeah. Yeah, the suffering in silence thing is it's not just a ballroom dance industry thing. People do it
No,
all over the world. This is a very common thing that people do. They feel this pressure, they feel this desire to meet certain standards. And like you said, a lot of the pressure comes from ourselves, not from the people
right.
around us. That we come out later and we're like, oh man, our families, our friends, our peers, they're like, if you would have just told me, like I never would have thought less of you or whatever. And you're just like, I mean, that's not what was going on in my head.
No, no. The narrative that we have in our head never matches the narrative that we have in
Right.
reality. And I think that that's the education that we all need. And
Yeah.
that is, like I said, that's not necessarily the dance community's responsibility, but it could
Yeah.
be. And it could be on a societal level. If we are linked through our community this way, we can have that opportunity to have those discussions with people.
Well,
But
that's what I think it is. It's starting the conversation, but it's also, I think, what the bigger issue, because when you said if you would have gone back, talked to people, but even then you were in such a low point, you didn't even know. Because sometimes, I mean, I just recently had a baby and, I was like, I'm not going to have postpartum depression. And I did so great. And then it hit me at a time I didn't expect, like 5 months after. And I was like, oh, I thought it was the first 3 months. I got through it. And there have been days where my husband would look at me and be like, what can I do for you? And I was like, what do you need? And I was like, I don't know. Like,
mm,
I wish I could tell you what I need and then you could give it to me and then we could solve the problem. But like, I actually don't even know what I want right now. And
right,
so even if you would have felt comfortable opening up to people, if it kind of maybe would have come out, at least the way we think of it, as like a jumbled mess. And
totally,
you know,
yeah,
and you wouldn't have known exactly what to say or how you're feeling, or like, I'm trying to describe to you how I'm feeling when I walk into this competition and why I'm feeling this way, and I don't even know how I got here. But the check-ins, having like, we have some good friends in our lives, family members that are like checking in with us, that inner
Right.
circle. And I think we feel so connected to our dance community because we see each other every weekend at a competition. And it's like, oh my gosh, these are our people. If someone goes down, we feel like we all go down with them.
Right.
And so why not, like we can't be too busy at an event to check in with people, to have those conversations, or like you said, the education of it all. If there was a lecture going on, instead of a lecture of rhythm technique, why not it be, how to mentally prepare before and after an event or something like that, to have more of those conversations, because I see that more. I just watched a television show about professional basketball team,
Mhm.
and there's this constant check-in through the players, through the coaches, and then through, because there's sponsorships, there's investors, there's board
Right.
members. Everyone is relying on these players to perform at the highest level possible because everyone's getting a paycheck from it. And I don't want to put it in a monetary value, but essentially, like, they're on TV. There's like, the bigger the spectacle, the more important it is for everyone to be on their A game.
Yeah.
And being that our industry is a little bit smaller, but it's still competing at that level, I see a lot of the players checking in with each other if someone's, taking too many Xanax, or if someone's, passing out after a play. Like they're talking to each other. They're like, "What's going on? Like, let me help you." And those are visual signs. Like you said, you were very good at probably hiding it. So no,
Yeah.
so some people knew, maybe because they knew you really well, and they're like, "Oh, something looks off," but they maybe didn't want to approach you because they didn't know how you would handle that, and they didn't want you to feel worse and be like,
Right.
"Oh no, am I not hiding it well?" Right?
Right. I
That's the
think
worst.
yeah, that I mean finding, and obviously depending on your own level of education, A, of yourself, and B,
Yeah.
of kind of mental health practices in general, you're going to process things differently to how
Totally.
they're intended. You can't, nobody can control how anybody reacts to anything. We can only control the way that we address things.
Yeah.
And I think it's checking in is the most important thing, and having people that you feel you can check in with, and
Hmm.
not necessarily having people that you are friends with that you can check in with, because sometimes it's a lot easier to check in with somebody who is feels like a designated person to talk to in these kind of
Yeah. A little
situations.
detached from the
Totally.
situation. Yeah.
Because I found it a lot harder to admit things to a friend than I was to
Right.
somebody I don't know, somebody who's paid to listen to me.
Yes.
And it's that those are the things that we don't necessarily have in ballroom dancing, because it's such a individualistic sport, really.
Hmm. Hmm.
I know it's partnership based, but that's only two people. That's not really a team. That's like,
No.
and you have coaches, but you don't have, in the same way a basketball team has um, coaches, staff. They're all
Well, they're
centered.
intertwined. Like everyone's decision affects everyone's
Right,
situation. So I agree with you. If you, like you and Asta, you decide to retire, that only affects a small group of people. Yes,
right,
everyone's going to be on your journey with you emotionally, but as far
right,
as like how it affects from a business standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, from that, it doesn't affect that many people versus if Patrick Mahomes decides to retire, that's a bit
right. No, absolutely.
that's a bigger ripple effect, I think,
Totally.
because of how many things he affects.
And also the coaches that we have also coach everybody else. So
Right.
it's your
Your competitors.
yeah, your coaches are coaching your competitors, which
Right.
that's just the nature of the industry. But you can't
Right.
necessarily,
Gets tricky.
the feeling is, oh, who do I check in with? I can't necessarily talk to my coach about this, because then maybe that changes how they teach. It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't, because that's not how people work. But the
Right.
thought process is there. So
Right.
it's kind of if you have the thought process of I am the problem, and
Mm.
I'm going to, and any decision that I make that changes the status quo impact everybody, you are always thinking of the worst possible case. You are always thinking that this person could turn against me. I'm going to lose this person. That's just the way that your mind is programmed.
Right.
And
It's making decisions out of fear.
right. And
Yeah.
I think that the education that I received whilst I was at McLean Hospital was that those are bad mental health practices. And I think the education that we can have, like you mentioned, like why not have a lecture on good mental health practices? Why not have a lecture on good sports psychology techniques that you can use yourself, so that you are the master of your own fate in that. And it's like, I worked with a sports psych purely for the sense that I did not know how I was going to react when I started competing again. Was I gonna, because there was a lot of negative thoughts that I had been given were based around competing, because you're immediately in a judged situation, and it's not personal, but it feels it.
Yeah. Right. And for you to jump back in, knowing that there are so many triggers there. I mean, what was that first competition back on the floor even like?
It was hugely enjoyable because I felt prepared. It was not until, and it went really well. It couldn't have gone better. So therefore everything was fine. And the preparation that I had done and the preparation that we had done was enough. And it was like, oh yeah, I got this. It wasn't until maybe the second, third, fourth comp, I don't remember which one it was, but it didn't go as well. Not because like we didn't practice. It just, the nature of the beast is it's not going to be the same every time. And it was one where it wasn't quite as good. That's when the self-doubt comes in. That's when the negative.
That brought up some of the older feelings.
Right. Because you don't feel bad when things are good. It's generally the things that are going to make you feel worse are the things that are bad. So it's, if you're not able to process the bad, that's what's going to kind of give you triggering moments. And it was really tough to sort of step back and go, no, this is what you prepared for. You didn't prepare for the first competition. You didn't prepare for things to go well. You prepared for things to go badly, because that's when you're going to need to reassess how you're handling things and reprocess things through a mental health practice that is good, rather than the one that you're choosing to do now. And
that's the insurance policy.
Exactly. The dancing is taking care of itself. You're not preparing that in any other way than you would always do, because there's only really one way of improving things.
Well, right. And that's what I was going to say. When you said you and Asta prepared, it's like, just so everyone's clear, reading between the lines here, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, you can prepare to dance, but really what you're saying is you prepared mentally as a partnership, really getting into that space. So then once that third or fourth comp happened and it didn't quite go according to plan, that brought up all these feelings, but you were able to see, like, I want to know how you realize now, because that becomes like the first test, right? Essentially in the environment that you kind of fell ill in. And so now you're able to react differently, as you said, to how you did in the past, and be like, oh, I've grown, right? That's where you really see, like, am I the same person? And I'm just going to fall back into that slump, because that's a very real fear as well. It's like going back into the environment that made you sick, and you're like, oh no, am I going to have these thoughts again? Am I going to go spiral back down?
Right. Yeah. I think that, that's when it comes down to an openness with those people around you. Like I spoke to, like Asta was aware of my situation. A couple of our coaches were aware of my situation. Yeah. I was also very upfront about kind of how I was feeling in the moment. I remember we had a first coaching lesson with somebody that I had never coached with before, that I wanted to coach with for a long time. And I was terrified. I was so nervous, because she was somebody that like I really admired and I'd really wanted to work with. And I went in and I said, I got to tell you, I'm super nervous about this. And I would never have done that before. I would never have gone
Wow.
to a coach.
I bet she really respected that vulnerability though.
I think so.
Yeah.
She handled it in exactly the way that she should have done, which was,
Yeah.
okay, no problem. We can work with that. Thank you for
Yeah.
letting me know, but I'm still going to push you because
Right.
that's what I'm here for. And it immediately made me feel like, oh, okay, yeah. And I would never have gone to a coach before and said, I'm super nervous about this, by the way, just in case everything falls apart. It's not necessarily representative of how I am. And it
Yeah.
was
It's
because
that
then immediately,
disclaimer,
totally, that immediately shows a weakness in my mind. And
of course.
that's not the case.
And
That's
that's
not
not what we're trained to do in our
totally,
industry. Is we
totally.
have to show our strength and like kind of that fake it till you make it. And then once you get
No.
that training, like you can kind of go on the floor with that strength. But that that fake it till you make it has started to create this suffering and silence or being scared.
Mm,
Not even, I don't even want to say suffering because the suffering is where you got to that point where, I mean, who knows, months, maybe even almost a year and a half, where you were down this road and weren't
yeah,
getting help. That's not what we're trying to, get to at this point. We're trying to stop that in its tracks. But even
right.
just a little anxiety can snowball so quickly into something, and people don't
Right.
realize that. I think that's the thing. Did you ever realize at the beginning that it would get to that point?
No.
Right.
That
You were like,
nobody,
I got this. I
nobody.
can handle this. Did you think that maybe it would go away if you just kind of kept dancing and found joy in things and you were like, it's fine. It's just going to handle it on its own.
Oh, totally. And it wasn't
Yeah.
to say that at my point at which I was struggling the worst, I wasn't finding joy in situations with people that
Right.
I was with. It
Right.
just was that the overriding message that went behind all of that joy was everything's terrible and
Wow.
you're a terrible person and everything creates a level of anxiety. Whereas,
Yeah.
and which is why I don't ever think that my situations in the past are never really fully to blame in any sense. Like it's you as an individual.
Yeah.
And it's like if you advocate for yourself well, you can handle any situation. And no situation is as bad as it feels in your head. And I think that
Wow. Say that louder for people in the back.
it's
Amen.
every situation
Yeah.
we go through, we process in a far more extreme way. So I
Right.
don't ever blame anybody other than myself for all of this. But
Yeah.
it's also I really reward myself for the fact that I have changed my process. And I look and I think and go, yeah, I'm really proud that I had the wherewithal to say that to somebody and had
Mm-hmm.
the wherewithal to sort of explain myself
Right.
and it not feel like an excuse, it not feel
Oh,
like an apology. It was just,
yes.
this is me. I'm gonna be here being
Yep.
me, and you're gonna either accept that or not, and that's okay. It's okay
Right.
if you accept that. That's your choice. And this is the thing. Everybody that I've spoken to, like the majority of people, I can't think of any indication that they haven't accepted what I've said. There's
Right.
never been because I'm not using it as an excuse, there's no reason to use it as an excuse because
Well,
I'm
that's the thing. It's
giving
like, it's
myself
not
an
you saying that doesn't mean I'm not going to try, or when it gets hard,
exactly.
I'm going to retreat. Like, that's not what we're saying here. It's being real because I think that's the misconception of that vulnerability for athletes or perfectionists or high achievers or whatever it is especially, you go, first person I could think of is someone like Shirley Ballas. You go and you have I love that woman so much, but she's
Absolutely.
very intimidating. And you go and you have a coaching with her. The first thing you want to do is you want to look strong. You want to feel like you're
So
prepared to have this coaching because you know this opportunity is so important. And the vulnerability of saying, hey, you know what? I'm so excited for this, but I'm also a little, anxious. And I just
right.
want you to know that. That is going to give her a starting point and not make it look like, well, geez, you're not even prepared for this. Why are we even doing this? You know
Right.
what I'm saying? Because I think that's the narrative that is perceived of like,
Totally.
my coach made a call and phoned in and like pulled some strings, and I don't want to mess this up.
Right.
you know?
And I think that repurposing some of the thoughts that you have and re-understanding, like rewording your mental process makes a huge difference
Right.
because it also changes the verbiage that you give out.
Right.
If you have the view that being nervous in a lesson with a top coach is a negative, if you talk about it, it will be a negative.
It'll
And it
come
will
off
be
negative.
exactly.
Yes.
Whereas if you have the approach of that's okay, it's a positive that I'm nervous because that shows my care. It shows my
Yes.
anticipation for this. It will come across as that way because the words that you choose reflect how you feel. And I think
Yeah.
that that's something that is huge. You are fully you can be fully in control of this situation and fully in control of how you present yourself if you are understanding how you are feeling. And understanding how you are feeling is really, really hard. And
It's really hard, but it's so crucial. And
it's so crucial.
what you're doing there in that moment, for those who are not understanding that process, is you're rewriting a belief system because
Correct.
you've believed this entire time based on past coachings or growing up in whatever environment. Maybe your parents subconsciously gave you a belief system because they perpetuated a certain behavior or whatever. And that's not a bad thing. There's no judgment on any of that. It's just how you were brought up in your environment. Now all of a sudden you have this certain belief system, and
Totally.
there are so many people, because I've done it too, where you're like, there's no positive side to that belief system. Me being
No,
anxious in a coaching with a high level coach, there's no positive way to say that. And the way that you just said it is like, no, it just means I care so much. And like,
right.
what a, like, all of a sudden, like, I got less anxious when you said that. You know what I mean? Like, that is so amazing to be like, yeah, that's exactly what that means. And when you're stuck in this negative thought process cycle, you don't, you can't find that positive spin on that thought process because you just think you're letting everybody down. And so
Totally.
rewriting the belief system in yourself first, then you're right. When it comes out of your mouth, all of a sudden there's a brand new intention behind it. The person is receiving it differently. There's a lighter airness about it, and you feel more free.
Right. It's
Yeah,
it's a huge burden that you lift off yourself that you are
totally.
putting in yourself. You are like
Yeah,
everything in your past has gone into that moment, but
right,
you are in charge of how you handle that moment.
right.
And you are in charge as to how you process that everything that's happened. And some people are really good at processing it. Some people who are neurodivergent like aren't as good as at processing it.
Yeah,
And they need more of an education, and they need more of an education in their own neurodiversity so that
yeah,
then they can go, oh, actually, the best way for me to understand this is this. And the
right.
best way for me to understand it is not the same as everybody else. But if you are willing to talk to people about how you're feeling,
Yeah.
you'll get to the point where you're able to talk it out with yourself. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to have that conversation with everybody all the time. You're able to understand it yourself. And
Yeah.
I was really fortunate to have two people super close to me in Morgan and Asta who just kind of accepted that.
Mm-hmm.
And Asta was so kind of just Asta's like the coolest person because
Yeah.
she just is really relaxed. She's somebody who taught me a lot about being a dancer, taught me a
Mm.
lot about the process of dancing, and taught me a lot about kind of the unnecessary stresses that we put on ourselves
Yeah.
because she's somebody who has been at the highest level for decades, like throughout her
Talk
entire
about
career.
sustainability. Yeah. Oh my
Exactly.
goodness. Yeah.
And that speaks not only to her talent, but also to her mentality. And
Right.
I learned a lot about what dancing is from her
Mm.
because I think that you put so much as a kid, I loved dancing so much and I loved it so much that I then started to hate it. And it was it was not because of it was because I was processing the things that were in the dancing that were wrong, the issues, the results not going right, all of these things. And
Right.
that really wasn't to do with the dancing. That was, or the partnership that I was in. That was to do with me and me in that situation.
How
And
you accepted yourself.
correct. And me not
Mhm.
necessarily understanding how I was existing and how I should be
Mm.
existing. So it fundamentally came down to me. And because I was in a situation where I was more open and more understanding, I then learned so much more from the person I was dancing with. And I'm
Yeah.
fortunate to still have the opportunity to work with her on upcoming projects like our website, upcoming shows and things. And I'm grateful that I get that opportunity. And I'm grateful that I kind of got to end my career in that way. Uh,
Yes, on such a high.
Totally. And I'm also and Morgan is somebody who is so open and understanding. She was behind me every step of the way in dancing. Every time we stepped on the floor, she was, whether she was there or not, she was, because she
The
was somebody
biggest
that I
cheerleader.
totally, my biggest
Love that.
cheerleader. She was somebody who understood what I was going through and
Right,
understood what I had been through and understood the dangers of it kind of
right.
more than anybody
Yeah.
because and because of that she was able to sort of help me process
Mm.
things in a way that meant that I wasn't allowing any kind of setback, anybody's comment to be
Right.
something that really changed my
That's
thought process.
incredible.
And that
Yeah.
was, and I think that without those two people at that time, like you meet people at certain times in your life and it just happens to be right. And I think that
They
the
were there at the right time.
totally, and I think that people have seen um people saw, like you said, we came out on the floor and it was like, oh wow, this is kind of two people who are kind of dancing together who then it works. The chemistry, the partnership, the connection
You
was
were
kind of
both just
there.
so loved individually. So for you to come together felt very superpower like, I think, for a
Right.
lot of people
Yeah.
watching. And we were all very excited. Whether we got one competition out of you or 20, it didn't matter. Everyone was just really excited to
I think
see
that
that energy.
yeah, and I think that energy that everybody felt was the fact that two people found each other at the right time in the right place, and it just kind of created this thing that was good for us as well as
Yeah.
being good for everybody else.
Right. It sounds very therapeutic what you went
Oh,
through with
100%.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You
100%.
have you're back in Boston, so you are now um, you're going to school. We had chatted about this a little bit. You're doing
Yeah, yeah.
sports psychology.
That's my plan. I don't start until later in the year.
Okay.
Um, but I'm kind of in the process of doing my wider reading, wider education for a master's in sports psychology. I'm
Incredible.
fortunate enough to have been able to have gone to school in the UK. I have my bachelor's. It's in theatre, so it's a bit of a departure for me.
Yeah.
But I felt that my kind of self-education in mental health and psychology and using sports psychologists was something that really ignited a passion in me and was
Yeah.
a way that I could link everything that was involved in my life in one way, really. So I'm
Incredible.
really, really looking forward to starting that. That's at Boston University. So I'll be here and it means that I'm able to compete. I'm able to teach. I'm able to kind of continue everything that I've been doing over the last
Right.
few
While you're doing
months
that.
whilst I'm
Y-
doing that. So
That's incredible. Yeah. Number one in the country. My husband is from Boston. He tells me all the time how the education system over there is, if I ever
it's
want to pick up our
second
family and
to
move to
none.
Boston, he's down.
Totally.
Oh, that's
I would
hilarious.
say avoid the winter, but
Right. That's why
that's
we
the only
haven't.
downside.
Yeah, because finding schools for our son in other areas of the country are a little bit challenging. But yes, he always talks to
Right.
me about Boston. Yeah, I'm really excited for you to, like you said, it's blending all of these things together. Had you not gone through that, this path may have never revealed itself.
Hmm.
And, not because we're gonna need to jump off here because I mean this could go on forever. I can see.
Yeah, sorry,
No, I love it. This is I feel bad keeping you longer, but
I'm
that
easy.
that identity piece that we've talked about on and off the floor, you and I, of feeling that connection between you said this to me once before. You said, not I am a dancer, but I am someone who dances. Because I think
Oh,
that you remember we talked about that a little bit. Is I just want to just kind of tie a bow on that real quick, because that I think is so um there's so much relatability to
mm,
that phrasing of, we get so wrapped up in, you walk through an airport, you tell people what you do, your whole identity becomes, I'm a dancer, and everything that goes along with that, everything that you think a dancer is, whether you watch Dancing with the Stars as a fan, or you are a coach, or you are my student who looks up to me, I portray myself in this way, and that has these characteristics, and I
mm,
become this thing. And when you said to me, I am someone who dances, it all of a sudden gave me like, my mind immediately went to, oh wow, that just opened you up to so many more things that you can be throughout your
mm.
day,
Yeah,
right?
I think that identity is a huge thing has been a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it comes down to the sort of dislike of myself
Mm.
and who I was. So therefore, I did not like that identity, but that was me. I can't deny that that was who I was at that time, but
Right.
that doesn't necessarily mean that's who I am. It was who I was when I was in that point.
Hmm.
But you don't necessarily have to identify with every aspect of yourself. And the more that you choose to identify with it, the more you bring that to the surface.
Hmm.
And I think that being a dancer, you are committing a lot of your life to it.
Yeah.
So you are sacrificing a lot. You are sacrificing a life outside of dancing for being a dancer. And that's not just boring dancing. That's kind of to a
It's all sports.
yeah,
Yeah.
to a certain extent, boring dancing. We're fortunate that we can do other things whilst doing it.
True.
The level of kind of commitment that it takes to be an Olympic athlete is above and beyond that it takes to become a ballroom dancer. But from that, which is a somebody who's a works in a different job, doesn't necessarily have to have the same feeling that they are a computer programmer. That is their identity. That
Well,
is
I think there's an
in that
aspect of
world.
them clocking in and clocking out.
Yeah,
Right
there's
there,
never really
when there's boundaries around your job or what it is that you do for a living, I think that
yeah,
that tends to separate the identity piece a little bit more than what
I
we
agree.
do. Because I mean, I remember when I was in my prime teaching, 40 lessons a week, and then I would go compete on the weekends, and then I would go out social dancing. I mean, it was my whole life.
Right.
You know
And
what I mean?
it's so pervasive that
Right.
you're teaching, you're dancing, you're competing, you're doing shows, you're traveling to do all of those things as well. So
Yeah.
it is completely pervasive of your life. And actually, for me, this moving to America was the only time that had ever been the case. I was when I was in England, I was a school teacher, um, and
Wow.
so Amy and I both worked at schools, and we kind of danced in the evenings and danced and still taught dancing, but we had a quote unquote real job. But
Wow.
but
That's
it's
crazy.
so and we'd both I'd been at school, we had kind of always done two things. And then moving here, it was the first time that I'd kind of committed to ballroom dancing being my career. And I
Mhm.
think that the length of time that we had been here, it had been like that gradual decline of the loss of self and then
Yeah.
loathing that person. So
Yes.
then you become I'm a dancer. And then you kind of make choices that you wouldn't necessarily make as Andrew. You make choices that you would make as a
A
dancer,
dancer.
or that
Wow, that's such a good way to put it.
or choices that you think a dancer would make.
Yes.
So then kind of like learning to understand who you are
Hmm.
is the most important thing. And I think I've always thought of myself as somebody who dances, not a dancer, because
Yeah.
I've always looked at the dance industry and kind of felt not necessarily as an outsider, but felt different to people. And that might not necessarily just be ballroom dancing. That might just be me in life. And
Yeah.
I think that's great personally. Now
Yeah.
it's nice to feel different. It's nice to
Right.
be an individual rather
Yeah.
than somebody who is just one of many. Um,
Correct.
not that everybody else in ballroom dancing is one of many, but I only know
Yeah.
me, so I don't know everybody
That's
else.
it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of nice to feel comfortable in my own skin. And I
Hmm.
would say that now more than ever, actually, I feel comfortable in my own skin, even more than I was when I was competing with Asta. Not necessarily because there was a problem with competing. It just perhaps perhaps over the years, maybe I shouldn't have ever been competing. It just is, it's something that has sat with me as
Mm.
something that was a part of my character, but isn't necessarily innate within me.
Yeah.
But it's like now I feel like I've been through such a understanding of self and that I can say I am going to be whatever I want to be. But whatever it is, I'm always going to be Andrew. And
Mm.
previously it was that for me is the biggest change, not necessarily previously I didn't want to be Andrew, and now I do, and I'm happy with that. I think that's
Mm.
a joy.
Wow. Yeah, that's woo. That's amazing. Yeah, that is just so real. Throughout this entire conversation, as you've been talking about your story and everything, like I just certain times of us seeing each other at comps just popped into my head.
Mm.
For those who've never come in contact with you, every time I've seen you, just big smile, big hug, just so warm, just so humble. And whether, it's been so many different times we've seen each other and all of that through what you've been going through, for you to be so selfless in that way, to still be there for your peers and it may be emotional thinking, gosh, if we only just would have known what you were going through. You know what I mean? Like we could have been there for you, but at the same time, that's why we're having these conversations, in retrospect, to be able to, so the next person doesn't have to feel that way. Also, it helped you grow. So now it's taken you down a different path now with sports psychology. So no regrets, but also I feel like that's why, and maybe that's why I'm emotional too, is that's why to me, this dance wellness community is so important.
Yeah, I think for me, that's
Is
why I'm more than happy to be an ambassador. It's nice to be able to have a community that is looking out for the wellness of individuals, not just the wellness of the dancing in that sense.
Yes.
There's a lot of people out there looking after the dancing, which is hugely important as well. I think I'm a big advocate for the growth of dancing, the
Of course.
expansion of dancing, the
Right.
maintenance of quality of dancing. I think that's
Right.
hugely important.
Success and
Yeah,
achievement,
totally.
absolutely, those are all wonderful things. But
But
we
none of
don't want
those
it to come at a cost.
correct. That's exactly what I was going to say. There's none of that comes at a cost, a human cost, because the
Right.
human people are more important than anything, and I think that that's something that everybody needs reminding of at some point.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
ultimately, you are more important. You
Yeah.
yourself are always more important.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that selfishly. You can do that selflessly,
Right.
but you have to look after yourself before you can look after anybody else. And if you
That's right.
neglect yourself, then that's where the problems really start.
Yeah. I always say we can't, well, I don't say it. A lot of coaches say it. You can't pour from an empty glass.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you are not just what you give to people. You are not just your skill. You're not just your world titles. You're not just any of that. You are you, and you have value without all of, in spite of all of those things. And those things are great, but they are not what make you valuable. So, yeah, thank you so much. I am just eternally
My pleasure.
grateful to be able to
Yeah.
have this real conversation with you. After everything that you've been through, all of the highest highs and the lowest lows, and then finishing your career on such a winning moment and being so celebrated that. And I love how humbled you are by that celebration. I know you and Asta feel exactly the same way in that regard, but I think it's rightfully deserved because the two of you are such wonderful people individually outside of dancing. And I think a lot of people, once they saw you make that decision to retire and really took that moment in, they realized all those, like I was doing, all those interactions they've had with you that had nothing to do with dance. It was just a pure human interaction. And
Right.
and that is such a beautiful thing to see two people like you succeed, but also just come to a beautiful closure of such an incredible career.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It meant a lot then. It still means a lot now, and it's very nice to have that sentiment and have that memory.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, there might need to be a part 2 or a part 3 once you get going in all of your studies, because
Absolutely.
this is fabulous. And for those who are, we have in our dance wellness community, for those who want to join the inner circle, we have all of the information in the show notes. We have our 10 practitioners who specialize in all these amazing things, from nutrition to mental health to physical therapy to financial health, which I think is very underrated. So many different things, business and branding, all the stuff. But also, what's so important, and Andrew, you are our first official featured ambassador in our newsletter, which is very cool. And so for those of you who are interested in chatting now, you know who our ambassadors are. We're going to start rolling them out, but at the same time, hoping that you feel more of a connection to those who maybe you've looked up to as, these icons in our industry, but that they're just like us and they are going through all the things. And if you see Andrew in a studio or at a competition, say hi, have that conversation. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
I would love to talk to as many people as possible. It's nice.
Yeah, because this is going to also, as you're going to be going through more of your studies in this as well, this is going to be exactly what you're focusing on in that mental aspect of that sports psychology. So very, very exciting. Thank you again for being here, and to many more conversations like this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me the time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.